and thanks for joining us today. Joe, very nice. You got the KPMG thing in the background there. Very impressive. Are you wearing your KPMG shirt as well, or no?
I won't tell you what I'm wearing KPMG today, Brad.
Nice. All right, we'll keep that. That's a quiet thing. And Greenberg men, good to see you as well. So again, audience, thanks for joining us. As Ellen said, this is our last OZ discussion, at least formally, for the year. We've been hosting these OZ webinars throughout the year, and we'll likely continue them in 2020. We get different folks who join us. We get different kinds of questions, 101, 201, 301 questions. And so that's what this is about. The goal was to share information, to bring experts, that'd be you three, on, and to talk about the program and its kind of whys and what fors and what we're seeing on the ground. So, and in the air and all around us. And so with Josh and his creaky door and Daniel with no creaky door, without further ado, let's start with who are you? Kind of what do you do? Keep it short. And let's go with, I think I've already asked this question of Joe, but I'm going to come back to that. Let's go with, what are you watching on Netflix? So who are you? What do you do? And what are you watching on Netflix? Joshua, you are unmuted, so I'm going to go to you first. Who are you? What do you do? And Netflix.
Okay. So my name is Joshua Greenberg, as Brad rightfully said. I work at a company called the Green Street Group. I'm the Director of Acquisitions. And the Green Street Group is a medium-sized, multi-family residential real estate developer that operates in New York City, primarily in Brooklyn. We currently have 4 development projects under construction, which total 100 apartments. And 3 out of 4 of our developments are OZ. What am I watching on Netflix? Let me see.
Not a trick question.
It's a little bit steamy, but I've just finished watching Sex Life on
Wow.
Netflix. I think I'm a little bit behind, but
okay. Worthy or not worthy?
Yeah, it was great. I don't often watch many series, and people were, my wife and lots of other people were raving about it, so I gave it a go, and it was well worth it.
We could further that conversation on why your wife was recommending it to you when she was not watching with you, but we'll move on. Joe, who are you? What do you do? Not what are you wearing? And what are you watching on Netflix?
Sure, Brad. My name's Joe Scalio. I'm partner at KPMG. I co-lead our national QOZ practice, which is composed now of probably about 120 people throughout the U.S. who work on opportunity zone deals kind of across both mainly on the coast, but we are getting more and more activity in kind of the heartland of the country. We've been doing this now for, I guess now almost 4 years. This group we kind of put together in early 2018. So it's been an interesting 4 years. I can't believe I'm saying it's 4 years almost since the legislation came out. I can tell you I'm not necessarily watching anything on Netflix yet, but I've started to watch Yellowstone, which I believe is on Showtime. And
we'll give you that. Any TV like that. So Yellowstone, a little bit dark.
Yeah, a little dark, but
okay. But Kevin Costner, and you're liking it?
Yeah, Kevin Costner so far. First few episodes, it does seem a little dark, and I've had a lot of people give me a kind of what the runway looks like a little bit too much. So we'll see how much darker it gets after the first 3 episodes that we've done so far.
My wife is watching it, and I've been told it's very dark, but she can't. It's like eye candy. She can't stop looking at it, so she's enjoying it. Daniel, who are you? What do you do, and what are you watching on Netflix? And by the way, is Joshua's accent? You can tell us. Is his accent for real?
I can confirm his accent's for real. I've been here since I was in my youth, so I've lost it a little bit, but it's a little bit still there. So I'm Daniel Greenberg. I'm Joshua's partner at the Green Street Group, Chief Operating Officer. Josh already gave some background on what we do. We're residential developers in New York City, primarily focused on Brooklyn. And I am watching the morning show on Apple TV.
Oh, nice. I heard it's very good.
Yeah, it is. I'm on season 2.
Very nice. Excellent. All right. Well, with that as the interest, now we've got some context. We got two developer owners. We've got Joe, who co-heads his firm's OZ practice that's 4 years old, but that's like 40 years in OZ land. And he's got 125 people, colleagues working with him kind of 24/7, literally, on this stuff. Let's talk a little bit about Daniel and Joshua, you know, whoever wants to go first, because you are not the same person. You guys can disagree, you know. What was your connection to OZs? Did you jump in early? Did you hear about it, you know, at some bar? What was kind of the original connection to OZs? And are you actively hunting in OZs? You said 3 out of 4 deals have OZ attributes, but tell us a little bit about the origin story, as it were, for Green Street and OZs. Dan?
Yeah, so we came across OZs pretty early on in the program in 2018. The only reason one of our projects is not OZ is because we actually started that one in 2017 when the rules of the law hadn't been passed. Now we're basically exclusively focusing on OZ. The thinking there is it's pretty much the same amount of effort, capital, risk profile, but it comes with a lot of tax benefits. And so,
okay. So same effort, same risk, but, you know, so it's got to be kind of a good real estate deal, is, you know, kind of your underpinning. Same effort, same risk, but better tax attributes.
Yeah, exactly.
Joshua? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's yeah, I think to summarize what Dan said, it's kind of it's the same returns that you typically get when doing a real estate development in New York City. And what they've done is they've I guess artificially overlaid an additional return on top of the normal return that you get, which is in the form of tax deferment and tax breaks on the real estate development. So yeah, it's basically the same risk with a superior return, and that's something that our investors really like.
And so let me probe that for a second. Superior return. Are you two investing your own money, or are we doing it with third-party capital, or are we doing both? So what's the deals typically look like?
We're doing both. We were fortunate to have a capital gain about a year and a half ago, which we decided to deploy using the OZ structure, which is how we initially got involved in the program. And since then we've raised third-party capital as well. And you know, in terms of returns, just to build upon that, you know, we're looking at high to mid-teens for a typical development of the type that we do, with the deferral and reduction and step up. I mean, that goes to the mid to high 20s. If we're deferring short-term gains, that's even nearing 30% IRR over a 10-year period, which makes it a really attractive proposition.
Some would say that's kick-ass. That's like a legal term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I concur with that.
Okay. Joe, to you, obviously I'm more interested in the origin story. You've been involved since kind of day one relative to OZs. How did you get pulled in, or how did you volunteer at KPMG, and how did it evolve at the firm to be 125 people, which is really impressive?
It's interesting. Obviously, in 2017, when the Tax Cut Act came out, you know, everyone focused, at least a lot of people were trying to focus more on, you know, some of the, I'll call it more sexy, to go back to that conversation I think you were saying, Dan, provisions of the new law around either international or some of these terms that people call guilty and fiddy. You hear these terms thrown about. And, you know, there was a lot of meat in those provisions, very complex. And I had a lot of people saying, you know, this is where I want to focus my time. And you know, I've always kind of looked at, you know, what impacts real estate, what impacts asset management, more from, you know, that lens. And when I started to look at opportunity zones, you know, we've had, you know, a couple different versions of them. They were called enterprise zones, they were called empowerment zones. But what was interesting about opportunity zones, which were different than some of their distant cousins in the other area, was there was no job requirements. There was nothing that was really administratively hard to avail yourself of. As long as you set up a relatively straightforward investment vehicle, and you were able to match capital gains, and the project was located substantially in an opportunity zone, you seem to have a simple home run to lift your IRRs, I guess, in accordance with Joshua was saying. We kind of always tell people, this benefit is really on the investor side, as doesn't preclude you from getting credits on assets or whatnot, but usually it lifts your IRR somewhere between 300 and 500 basis points. And when you tell people that, a 12 becomes a 15 or 12 becomes a 17 on these deals, or you can do the arithmetic yourself, was interesting, but there didn't seem to be that much that was needed in order to get that, I'll call it, free lift on your IRR. And where other people focused, honestly, and many tax professionals focused on some of the more sexy aspects of the 2017 Act, there was a group of us who really focused on this one small little provision in the code. And, there's a whole long backstory of how that got into the code that you can, Google and find out there. An entrepreneur and some politicians who, wanted to really help both the urban areas of the country and the rural areas. And that's usually an unusual partners in any type of tax legislation. So the long and short, Brad, is it's probably more from my history of working on this, and honestly, no one else really wanted to work on it because it was not really one of the provisions that was really focused on, or at least initially, and that kind of led to where we are now, almost 4 years later.
So not initially viewed as sexy, but now like kind of the darling at the ball. Very exciting. And again, we'll talk numbers in a bit, but there was, I think, a recent report that was issued from, I think it was the GAO, Government Accounting Office, showing that there's been $20 billion with a B of investment in the zones. Now, the question is whether that's equity or whether that's total value. I think it was equity value, which means that that's like close to $70 billion of transactions. So like Dan and Josh, your deal's probably not even in there yet. So it's going to be much bigger. And there's a lot of activity now. So it's fascinating to sort of see how things started and where they've evolved to. Let's talk a bit about, or pick up on kind of one of the points you just made, Joe, of, look, there are folks, because the former president, Trump, was supportive of the program. There are people that don't like it. There are others that love it. There are others that, irrespective of Trump or not Trump, they like the attributes of the program, what Joshua and Daniel was talking about earlier, relative to the returns that one can garner on a good real estate deal, and making it even better, getting into the 20s from mid-teens. And so the question, though, is, why do people view the program, other than politically, and maybe that's the answer, but why do people view the program kind of hostilely vis-a-vis what it was originally set out to accomplish? So, Joe, you were, alluding to, I think, Senator Scott and Senator Booker, a Democrat and a Republican, one urban, one rural, both grew up relatively poor, and they were working together for a bunch of years to sort of provide a program that would incentivize capital gains eligible dollars to invest in low income areas. And so, to your point, the program originally was focused on affordable housing, but then got modified in the law, and it allows for not only affordable housing, but office, residential, retail, hotel. Unless you're a prohibited use, you can do almost anything, not only for real estate, but for businesses. So do you think, Joe, from kind of seeing what you see, do you feel like the program is being used for its intended purpose? A little bit of a charged question in that, it really comes down to what's the intended purpose, and do you believe it should have been for affordable housing? Or do you believe that, well, the act allows you to do many things and it's being used for the many things? So from where you sit, having the 125 professionals working with you, do you think the program's being used for the intended purpose, moving dollars that wouldn't otherwise be interested into areas of the country in all 50 states, USVI and Puerto Rico, do you think that it's been effective?
I would say, Brad, if you go with the intended purpose being to make investment dollars move into certain areas, then I would say it's met its purpose. The issue is there's over 8,700 zones throughout the country, and probably of that, 90% have seen $0 go into them. The other 10% have seen whatever dollar amounts they're out there going into them. So, clearly from an intended purpose point of view, have investment dollars gone into QOZ zones? The answer is yes. Have investment dollars gone into many QOZ zones? The answer is no. And I think that becomes some of the rub on this from a political point of view is, certain areas, and, Josh and Daniel, this is kind of a loaded question to you a little bit, but, certain areas that were designated, and obviously you were not involved in the designation process, the governors were areas that were gentrifying and moving up, and were based on 2010 stale data as far as those. It's not not for us to solve on the call, but the piece that when you start to go through and look at it is the areas that seemingly are receiving these dollars, or maybe areas that people don't perceive to be low income communities, or have evolved from low income communities to much more moderate income communities. And that seems to be where the predominance of the dollars are going, Brad. And that is leading to, some political, I'll call it friction, is because the program is absolutely driving investment dollars into QOZ zones, but all QOZ zones are not seeing some level of that. And correspondingly, you have certain great stories out there, like for everyone always uses the Erie development story of what's going on there, that presumably would not have ever happened but for the QOZ legislation. And the people there are, the local governments are doing a great job on it. It's driving a great redevelopment there. I think it's really hard, and Josh and Daniel, I'd love to get your thoughts. I mean, the local governments really need to step up and to really drive some of this if they want to see those dollars coming in there. And certain local governments are better at it than others. But I think that's where the friction comes in, Brad, politically, is that the dollars are going in. Clearly, you can do that, but where are they going? And they seem to be going slanted into only certain zones. Does that seem fair? Because the program was designed, I think, to some degree to perceived to be a fairness program to get dollars investing in a lot of zones. And right now, these dollars have gone into a limited number of zones.
Okay, interesting commentary. Guys, you want to react to that? Again, I would just preface the commentary with, to Joe's point, it wasn't Josh and Daniel that were the ones that, allocated where the zones were. It was the governors of all 50 states. It wasn't even the federal government. The federal government, for what Joe said, looked at HUD's census data. That data, when they created the program, was a little bit stale. It was from 2010. The program got enacted in late 2017. So that census data was a little bit stale. The census data was given to all the governors of all 50 states, and they were told, hey, here's the available zones per HUD census data that are low income areas. You pick which areas you want, urban, rural, suburban, it's up to you, but you can pick like around 25% of the zones that are eligible in your state. So it wasn't kind of the federal government that did something poor, even though the data was a little bit stale. It was kind of the local governors that made these choices. So with that as the imprimatur, Dan, Josh, do you feel like you're, look at kind of where you're developing? So Brooklyn, 10, 15 years ago, a little bit tricky to say the least, but up and coming. Do you feel any pressure? Have you gotten any sideways looks or glances relative to, hey, why are you guys using the OZ program in Brooklyn, one of the markets that's on fire, throughout the United States? Did you feel any of that? Do you sense any of that? Are you guys awake? What's going on?
I definitely agree with Joe that money is definitely flowing into opportunity zone areas. But especially in New York City, areas change, I think, faster in New York City than they would in other places. And some of these areas were chosen based on a 2010 census. So areas that were lower income and really needed help in 2010, now if you fast forward to 2021, they no longer need the extra boost that you get from OZ, but they still have it. So it's definitely the case that a lot of money goes to the top zones as opposed to the zones that really need it. And yeah, I mean, there are a lot of zones that might have needed it in 2010 that no longer need it, but they still have it. So that is that is the case.
Dan, when you were out raising money, did you feel any pressure from people saying, hey, why are we putting money into Brooklyn? Or do they like the fact that it's going into Brooklyn and it's an up and coming area? Did you sense any of that out there? Kind of.
They like that, Brad. I haven't really gotten responses that were sort of looking down on it for misusing the program or anything like that. If anything, people appreciated that they could get the tax benefits while not having to take the unique risks of investing in really low income, economically distressed areas. And there are unique risks with that. When we look at the universe of potential investments that are available to us, there are a lot of opportunities that are in places like, this is very local, but East New York, East Flatbush, that are economically distressed and that people, usually shy away from. And the Opportunity Zone program really try to steer money to those areas. The problem is that there are a few areas that, were maybe misclassified or maybe the data was stale. And our projects have tended to be in those areas. They still have a certain percentage of the population that are lower income, poverty, and all of that, but there is some momentum, some gentrification going on. And so there's a positive story there to tell investors, along with the added layer of tax benefits. And I think people have appreciated that. Whether that's fair or sustainable, that's really another question.
Well, but again, that to your point and Joe's, that's beyond our call. That's kind of public policy as to where those zones were crafted. And, you're utilizing the program for what it's intended to be, which is investment of capital gains dollars in an area in order to essentially adaptively reuse or create from nothing projects or businesses. And so, again, it's an easy target to throw a stone at from the outside. But the reality is you're investing real dollars into an area that heretofore hadn't seen that or hadn't seen it in quite a while. So yes, it's open. The program is open to any number of criticisms like everything else. But the fact of the matter is that jobs have been created, even though they're not required, and investment has been made, and construction is going on despite or irrespective of the pandemic. So again, just me on the little soapbox there. Sorry for that diatribe. Joe, let's talk a bit about the funds that are out there. So the audience is likely aware that two people, Josh and Dan, Brad and Joe, can create an LLC, and that LLC can qualify as a fund. So two people in an LLC can be a fund. But there are also these, funds that everybody kind of heard about day one, running around. We're going to raise $100 million or $1 billion or $5 billion. If you were a former press secretary, and what's going on with those funds? Are they like for real? Do they really have money? Have you seen them in the deals that you've been involved with? What's the story there? Is that a good place if Dan and Joshua need money? Is that a good place for them to go to raise capital, or are they better off kind of friends and family? What do you think?
Yeah, here's what I would say, Brad. I would say there's probably 75-80% of all the deals we see are, I'll call them friends and family deals, where it's, kind of private placement, probably is, other than if they, someone wanted to, promote it to some degree, very quiet. But there are plenty of asset managers that, have worked in real estate, and you could go down the whole list of them, who have launched opportunity zone funds. Some of those, are well known. Some of those are people who had grand aspirations of raising 2 or 3 billion and probably came in a whole lot less than that. So some of the data gets a little bit skewed, especially on a report that was prepared that said there was 900 funds out there. I think there's 900 funds that were looking for money. I don't know how many of them ended up with meeting their goals and how many of those got 20% or decided not to launch because they couldn't get it there. I think all of us over the last 4 years, I've met more people who wanted to launch opportunity funds who had never launched a fund in their life, had never done a real estate deal, but they were going to launch an opportunity fund. And without a track record or having, friends and family capital, it's hard for people to part with their money. So I think some of the numbers that are out there are inflated, Brad, in one direction, which is, hey, but someone was going to launch a $500 million fund. Did that happen? We won't know. On the flip side, I think some of it's quiet capital from friends and family. So that GAO number was interesting to me because that's people are filing the IRS forms and they're able to aggregate them after a couple of years. And the fact that 20 billion was going in through the end of 19 kind of, I think, in my mind, made a lot of sense based on kind of what we've seen through the end of 2019 on deals, with a lot of that being very quiet money, either someone's own proprietary money or friends and family or, kind of a small group. That's where the majority of these have occurred. Now, I will tell you, we are moving, hopefully, we have a public company that's an opportunity zone fund where you can literally call your broker up and say, hey, I want to make an opportunity zone investment, defer my gain. You call your broker, you buy the stock, and it's done.
Okay, pause there for 1 sec, Joe. So to those on the call, on the webinar, whatever we're doing this call webinar, that's Bell Point Joe's referring to. So they're a public company. Back to you, Joe. Keep going. So Bell Point's a public company organized as a REIT. Go ahead.
Well, it's been reorganized as a limited
partnership. I was going to say.
But there are others that are looking at the same pathway from both a point of view, Brad, of becoming public QOFs, which you would be able to buy into kind of that entity, that management, and they would make their investments for you. There are others that are launching opportunity zone businesses that would qualify so that other QOFs could invest in them. They're usually very capital intensive projects that are structured in that way. So we're starting to see a little bit more maturity as far as public companies and larger fund offerings in larger projects, which is good, I think, for the industry. On the flip side, there are people who are, and I think it's incumbent on everyone on this call, who are utilizing the program to launch funds that are, not really in the zone. They're sort of kind of cryptocurrency, kind of commodity funds. And that, those things are going to be the ones that are going to give the program a bad name, not the investments that, Daniel and Josh are doing, because people are moving in those areas. There's dollars, people are living there, but those that are sort of out there in the internet that really aren't located there, but for a server sitting in a spot that's located in the zone, those are the ones where, you worry about abuse. And those are the ones politically that, cause problems for the rest of the people who are making real investment dollars in the zones.
Makes sense. Josh and Dan, back to you. Let's talk about kind of when you were out raising money. Did you think about going to any of those funds, or did you target right away kind of friends and family because you thought that there was, a lot of fluff and not a lot of stuff in the funds that you were seeing online? Daniel, what was your kind of targeted area? What did you go after?
We started out with friends and family and branched out to individual high net worth individuals. That's mainly a function of our deal size. We're sort of small to medium, and so a lot of funds. We approached a fund who was interested in our projects, but they had a $20 million minimum check size, which was a little too big for us.
Gotcha. And do you think, would you stick with that program as you guys go and look at other deals? It sounded like you were saying earlier that the two of you are going to focus on opportunity zone deals, because why not? If you're taking the risk, you may as well get the added tax benefit. Will you start to look at those funds as potential investors, or it's just not worth the, brain damage?
Yeah, we actually haven't gotten to a point where it's necessary. I mean, we're probably sticking with the current strategy until it becomes a limiting factor.
So Josh, to you, talk to me about like, what do you like about the program? And then I'm going to flip it around to what don't you like? So that's the forewarning. But Josh, what kind of attracted you and Daniel? We heard about kind of the superior return for the, risk. Is there anything else in the program that kind of grabbed your attention that you liked, or that made it efficient for you guys as you were hunting for deals?
It definitely makes it a lot easier to raise money when you have the extra boost that you get. What else do we like about the program?
While you're thinking about that, did you find that your investors understood it, or were you doing a lot of education of them to sort of get them to buy into that there's, as Joe had said, 300 to 500 basis points more of value to them because of the program, the deferral, the reduction, the elimination? Did people understand that, or was there some education along the way?
There was a little bit of education that had to take place, but it's a fairly simple concept. People come to us, especially in the last few years. Asset prices have done so well on a global basis. People have large built-in capital gains, and don't really need much explaining to kind of coach them through the fact that they have these gains, and you get the benefit from investing in a typical real estate investment, and you get to defer the gains on you get to defer the tax on the gains that you've already made. So yeah, I mean, that's the main attraction.
Do you think that, Dan or Josh, do you think that, again, let me just touch on the point first, then we'll come back to it. So at the end of this year, for those on the call that aren't aware, most will likely be aware, but it's not a big deal if you don't know. The second benefit of the program was, the first benefit is deferral. You pay capital gains tax instead of today on your gain. You get to pay it at the end of 2026. So that's deferral, pay a little bit later, not now. The second benefit was, if you invested in 2018 or 19, you got a 15% reduction. If you invested in 20 or 21, you get a 10% reduction in the amount subject to tax. So what I'm getting to slowly, unfortunately, is that in the next couple of weeks, that 10% benefit will go away. Meaning, if you don't have gain eligible dollars that have been invested in a QOF before 12/31/2021, footnote, please do not wait till 12/31/2021 to do this. If you don't have gain eligible dollars that go in there, you're not out of the program. You just don't get the reduction benefit. So the question, guys, is, have people started to raise with you, hey, we want to get involved in your deals now because of the 2021 reduction, and we wouldn't be interested next year, or is that hasn't come up yet?
Brad, I think out of the three benefits, the reduction is probably the least important for investors. It is a small reduction, 10%, versus the time value of money over a 6 or 7 year period. And honestly, the main motivation that a lot of investors have is the deferral of the tax now, because no one wants to pay 20, 30, 40% in tax now, and whatever they can do, whatever they can do to defer that till 2026 sounds like a good deal to them.
I debate that. I agree with you, but I think the real carrot, the real massive benefit, which is not lost on you, is, hey, if we follow the rules and we stay there for 10 years and we sell, we're not paying on the appreciated value, any capital gains. And for the federal government, and 38 states have followed that. I mean, that's really the driver. It shouldn't be, to your point, the 10% is a nice kind of benefit, but that shouldn't, force you one way or the other to doing it or not doing it. All things being equal, if you could do it in 21 versus 22 and you were going to do it, sure, you may as well get the 10%, but not that big a deal. Joe, go ahead.
I would say, investment advisors who are advising lots of people do push the reduction benefit. And in 2019, when the 7-year benefit was there, we got to the 15%. We had a lot of people closing in 2017. We do have a lot of people scheduled to close in 2021 because they want to get their money into the QOF to get the extra 10%. I do agree with Daniel. Mathematically, it doesn't move the meter that much, but people look at it, they're giving up something, so why give it up? And
Right.
that they want it. So we do have, like I said, for various investment advisors that we work with, they are going through the process now and bringing in money in this month to give people that ability.
Joe, I didn't want to short circuit you. I had asked Daniel and Josh kind of what they liked about the program. You want to toss your 2 cents in on what do you like, and then pivot to what don't you like? What would you change?
Sure. I think what we do like about the program is, it has clearly the ability to be very transformational. If it works like it does in Erie, or it works in certain other places, it really can change the community. And as I said before, if the local governments have their act in place, putting a local grocer in the main street, of a community of 20,000 people, can help the community. So we can see how it can work in a lot of different areas. So I think what we like about the program is, if it's able to meet its, fulfill its, I think, potential, it could be very valuable for a lot of different communities, a lot of small communities. Honestly, a lot of rural communities could really utilize it. And some of the ones we work with are starting to get it a little bit. I think we do need some help from the Department of Agriculture, and the local communities a little bit need to work a little bit together to help those rural areas. So we like that, the fact that it can be very transformational and can be, in our mind, easy to apply to local communities, because it's a relatively flexible program. It's not as rigid. I think what we don't necessarily like is that there's no reporting requirements really around it yet. And what that does is, from when we look at it from, we want this program to be, to flourish. We want this program to be renewed in 2028. Is when it really expires. So if we collectively want this program to continue on, I think we got to be able to have the transparency that needs to occur. And a lot of those requirements came out at the last minute, Brad, from the proposal.
Yep.
But getting some reasonable level of transparency and requirements on the benefits to the community, potentially the ESG benefits. You can kind of figure out how this works in today's world as we move more into ESG. I think would be what we would want the program to evolve to, because I think that would also help it to be a little bit more bipartisan and not be so much economic, but also having a good social benefit to those areas. So that's what we think, would be nice to see the program evolve and change into.
Guys, you agree with, are you willing to walk down the path with Joe on more transparency and reporting? So there's been a lot of conversation from day one that at the last minute, as Joe indicated, the reporting obligation with respect to the program, there's an annual certification, but there's no real reporting. And so, this program is a little bit of the Wild West. You're only as good as, or you're good because you know things. And you have to sort of talk to people to find out stuff. There's nobody that's reporting, here are all the deals that are going on. So it's kind of word of mouth. Do you think that some higher level of transparency and reporting on key performance indicators would be helpful? Or would you put that in the annoying category?
I would be totally fine with that. I think an important point that Joe made is that we want this program to be broadly accepted. And there are complaints and critiques out there that there isn't enough transparency in reporting, and that is probably fair because, as programs go, it is pretty much the Wild West. And so anything that we can do to help the program, gain broader acceptance would be totally fine.
Good response. And, I know you're sincere there. I think that, kind of just stepping back for a sec, the program has always had, it's kind of funny, we used to get, and I haven't heard this in a while, we used to get a lot of questions on, around the presidential election, is Is Biden in favor of this program? Do the D's like the program? Do the R's like the program? The reality is on the ground that the program has seen broad support on both sides of the aisle, both D's and R's. They believe in it for different reasons, but they both believe in the program for all intents and purposes. So there's a lot of co-sponsors to the program, the original bill from Senator Scott and Senator Booker. And so it should be, there should not be a surprise relative to, well, is there a concern that President Biden's going to do away with the program? Put aside the fact that he couldn't do that if he wanted to. It's kind of a congressional thing. But, you know, he's firmly in favor of and said day one that he's in favor of the program. Why? Because it benefits, you know, all kinds of different people. And so it speaks to different things if you're a D or an R, most likely. But most of the program has broad, sweeping support. And in fact, there's been a couple of bills to extend the program, not only from the end of 2026, the window kind of shuts, and as Joe alluded to, kind of that's when we get this, you know, can you invest or not invest? The program's still good, even though there's no reduction benefit after this year, through the end of 2026. And, you know, the bills that have passed the House that are stalled in the Senate are to extend the 2026 time period to 2028. And again, had broad, sweeping bipartisan support in the House. It just hasn't been moved in the Senate because there's a little thing called infrastructure that's kind of standing in the way before they're going to move this, most likely. So we'll keep an eye on that. And my sense is that something will happen there. If you're a believer in the program, my sense is something positive will happen there. It may not be 2 years on the extension, but something will happen. That's just, you know, me kind of crystal balling that. So Joe, thanks for raising that. Let's step back and sort of do a little bit of reflective viewing here, if that's even a word or a phrase. Joe, what are you, looking back over the last 4 years, what do you see for your clients as, or what have you seen for others that you had to fix, I guess? What are the biggest pitfalls in the program? Things that people have tripped over that with a little bit of focus, they would have avoided. So what are things to pay attention to avoid from your perspective, staying away from the crosshairs of the IRS and staying inside the kind of four corners of the program?
Yeah, I think we're probably up now to probably almost a dozen people who have not properly self-certified and have gone to the IRS for relief, known as what we call a private letter rolling. We've done a bunch of these, but I mean, I think we talked about there's limited amount of compliance with this, but there's, you know, whenever we do in the tax world have to make an election to certify, it's important that that election occurs timely. And once it doesn't occur timely, then the taxpayer is taken out of taxpayer's hand and it goes to the IRS for their relief. So we've had over the last couple of years, more people than I could imagine not timely file their certification and then have to go to the IRS. And that's not cheap. There's a significant filing fee of nearly $13,000 for them to process it. But, you know, that I think is an area, Brad, where, you know, we talk about limited compliance on it, but that's something that, you know, I've been shocked that we tracked this. We're up to a dozen of these now. Some that we've had to fix, some that others have had to fix. I mean, it's become a little bit standardized, a little cottage industry, but that's one thing that's there. The second thing is, you know.
Okay, let me pause there for a sec. I'm sorry.
Sure.
So let me pause there. So we're talking filing timing. So let's probe that for a sec. The testing that you alluded to happens twice a year at the QOZB level. So if you're a business, you have testing on June 30th and December 31st. Yeah. And then Joe, when's the annual certification and who's supposed to file that with the IRS?
Yeah, that is filed on this form 8996. The QOF is supposed to file that on a timely filed return. In the first year of the QOF's existence, they have to make an affirmative election. So that's that election to certify. If that's not filed timely, then that QOF can't elect to certify. If it can't elect to certify, then the investors who put their money in will not get the tax benefits. So that's kind of the
that'll be bad. Right. So that'll be bad.
I think the other thing that, you know, the IRS has been very generous over the last couple of years by providing certain COVID relief in 2020 and 2021. Mm-hmm. That going back to, I think it was either Daniel or Josh called it the Wild Wild West. I mean, there are people out there who just are not doing the things they need to do because they say, well, I got COVID relief, and that relief is limited to some degree. And it's limited really at the QOF level, not at the investment level down below. That still has to qualify. So I've had plenty of people say, well, I got free pass in 2020 and 2021, and like at the QOF level, but not at your operating businesses level. Those are not free passes. So I think there's a little bit of a misperception out there that, we are in this relief period that's about ready to expire in 23 days from COVID relief that came out in 2020 and 2021. But there's still things that should have been done over the period of time. The one thing that I know, Brad, that we emphasize a lot, and we continually make sure people do this, or make sure they understand the implications of not doing it, is the IRS has been really generous with regulations, allowing you to really aggregate your capital. So they'll really allow you to aggregate your capital. Capital generally comes in maybe what I call a bumpy fashion. It comes in spurts, mainly because of the 180 days and the timing of everything. But because that capital comes in bumpy, many people are sitting on a lot of cash that's in their operating businesses that need to be spent over a number of years. The IRS does not want to turn in this program into being like a hedge fund where you pool capital, you make financial assets. So they've allowed us to use this term, a working capital safe harbor plan. And if you execute that correctly, that provides a cascading of automatic reliefs to other provisions that are out there. So the fact that you have a good working capital safe harbor plan allows you to pass various tests at the operating business level that you would not be able to pass but for the working capital safe harbor plan. So we emphasize this to anyone who's doing any deals, that you want to really have a robust plan. It needs to be put in place. You need to do all the bells and whistles, because once you do that, it allows you to pass various tests that are at the opportunity zone business level.
Great reminder. So that's Daniel and Joshua. I kept hammering you guys on the working capital plan. Put that aside. So what Joe's talking about is at the QOZB level, we have various tests. There's a 5% test, a 50% test, and a 70% test. The working capital plan being put into place at the QOZB level, there is no such thing as a working capital plan at the QOF level. It doesn't exist. It only works at the QOZB level, as Joe said. Putting that in place contemporaneously with the investment is what makes it go and allows you to take the position appropriately that you have 31 months per your plan to achieve certain of the tests. So without that, you're a bit naked when you're building a building as to how you're going to satisfy the 70% test. So again, Joe's point spot on. One, pay attention to your filing timeframes and make sure whoever is doing this for you, whether you're doing it yourself, which is fine, not a great idea, but fine, or whether you have your accountant do it for you or your accounting firm, with your return, make sure you timely file your 8996 for the fund. And if you're an individual, your 8997, because missing that timing is a bit deadly. Okay, so timing on filing is very important. Working capital plan contemporaneously with investment in QOZB, also very important. You don't want to be sitting there with an IRS agent a year or 2, 5 down the road, and they say, well, where's your plan? And you're like, well, I'm working on it. That will not work. Okay, so pay attention to those rules, and life will be a bit easier. Quick question from the audience, and again, audience, feel free to email in. We're happy to answer. So from Daniel writes, hey, he doesn't say hey, but I'm saying hey. If we set up a single project OZ fund, so Daniel, I'm going to take a little liberty there. That will be your QOF, your Qualified Opportunity Fund, before 12/31/2021. So that's this year. And we fund it with our 2021 capital gain. Will we qualify for the 10% basis reduction in 2026, even if the OZ fund does not purchase an OZ property until the first half of 2022? Okay, great question. Short answer, yes. Daniel, Joe, give me the thumbs up. I was getting there, but yes is the answer to that. Why? Dollars need to be gain eligible dollars need to be placed into a fund before the end of this year, 12/31/2021. So long as you use those funds, once the fund touches the money within 6 months, and deploy 90% of them into a business or into real estate in a zone, it will work. And so deployment of gain into fund is the predicate. That has to happen before the end of this year. Per your question, that would have happened. The fact that you buy the real estate either in the fund or you drop it into a QOZB and the QOZB buys within 6 months, both would be fine and achieve the objective of meeting the test and being able to claim the 10% reduction. Okay, so good question there, Daniel. Thanks for that. Daniel, Josh, things that concern you in the plan on a go forward, what would you like to see changed, if anything? Or are you just happy clams that, you know, you're able to participate in this thing and, you know, people are coming and knocking on your door to, you know, give you dollars? What's the story?
I definitely think that there are things that could be improved for the program. One thing that we come across all the time is we have investors that come and they want to invest in OZ. They have money, they want to invest in New York City real estate, and they love the fact that if they invest in an OZ, there are no capital gains on the investment. So they want to do that, but then they learn that they don't have existing gains, and if you don't have existing gains, you are then precluded from the program. So I definitely think that the program would benefit as a whole if anyone was allowed to invest in OZ and get the benefits of OZ, maybe not necessarily the deferment of the existing gain, because you wouldn't have that, but the ability to not have to pay capital gain tax on the real estate investment. And I think it's really I think that it does benefit the intention of the program overall. I mean, the intention is to bring dollars to low income areas. So what they've done now is they've really, in a way, it's been criticized that it's only really available for the rich people that have these enormous capital gains that they can then redeploy into real estate. And the program as a whole would attract many more investment dollars for these low income areas if anyone could invest. So I'd like to see that in the revised bill.
So you're, from a public policy perspective, your view is if we didn't limit the investment to gain eligible capital gain, short or long-term gain eligible dollars, and in fact opened it up to ordinary income, that would incent others to potentially invest in low income areas and provide them with the upside on the transaction of their business. Okay, it's a good one. I like that. Joe, what would you like to see changed in your mythical world that you live in? You actually live in the real world, but in this fantasy land that I've got, you know, what would you like to see change?
You know, I look at it that, I mean, this is, to me, great for business, great for real estate. What I would like to see changed is making sure that some of these outliers of businesses that are, you know, basically a gold fund or a Bitcoin fund and those type of funds that are really kind of in cyberspace that people are arguing can be in an opportunity zone when you place a server there. They get a little bit, those things get kind of stamped out of the program, because I don't want things like what, you know, Daniel and Joshua are doing, which are obviously, you know, just stepping back, are going to help the community. There's no doubt with having a project that they have and more people living in those areas, more dollars being spent in those areas. I don't want those to be tainted with the same brush that some of these are. And, you know, from a tax policy point of view, you know, great programs have been destroyed by people abusing them in areas that they were never intended for. And that's the thing that I, you know, would like. And we kind of talk to different people. We'd like to see the government focus on is making sure these outliers don't taint the program with a big brush.
Fair enough. Okay, parting shots. We're at 12:28, so I'm going to go around the horn. Quick parting shots, and then I will wrap us up. Daniel, it could be OZ related or just general stuff. What do you want to share with the audience as we start to leave slowly 2021 or quickly and look into 2022? What thought do you want to share with them, either on OZs or on general topics? Daniel, that's to you.
Not quite sure, Brad.
All right, I'll give you 5 seconds to think about that. Joe, parting shots on OZ. What are you seeing in the future? What do you think is coming down the pike?
I think it would be great to have some Democrats pick up the ball on this and run with it. There's been some really great projects in the Newark area, so they should, clearly have be well sourced to Cory Booker. So I'd like to see, a few more Democrats be more publicly open and making this program. It is bipartisan, a little bit behind the scenes, but be a little bit more public bipartisan. And I think what we probably will see is some of the Democrats putting a little bit of a stamp on it through transparency and a little bit more reporting. I think that would be great for the program.
Okay, transparency and reporting, D's more public. Joshua, what do you think? Parting shots on OZ or just general thoughts?
Yeah, I think I did stand on my soapbox the last time I spoke. So, I mean, yeah, my parting message, I guess, is just that really looking forward to 2022. I think every day that goes by, more and more people get vaccinated. And, I'm just really looking forward to getting back to a normal life. And I see 2022 as the year that it's really going to happen. I hope.
Okay, back to normal. Got it.
Back to normal.
Daniel, have we tap danced enough for you to come up with a thought, or you're just bollock stuff up there?
I'd actually just reiterate what Josh was saying prior to that.
That's point. Like cheating, man. You can't take off on his guide. I'm sorry.
About not constraining the program to be only for gains eligible dollars. Because what we found is a common misunderstanding among lay people, people who want to be investors, is that, hey, even if we don't get the deferral or the reduction, we can still get the step up. And that is what a lot of investors think. And we've had to turn people away from deploying their capital into needy areas because of that constraint. And so that is one area with respect to OZ that I think could be taken a look at.
I would agree with Dan. That's definitely top of the list, and we would hear.
It was your point. You better agree with them.
Yeah, we'd hear less about the fact that the program is only designed for the rich to benefit, and I mean, it's such a great, really a gift from the government, and why should it not be available for people for everyone to benefit from?
Okay, I like that. So be available to everyone. All right, let me give you a kind of a whirlwind tour of what we just talked about for the last hour. So we talked about, look, for the same effort, the same risk, you get superior returns if you're investing in the OZs. We also talked about, it enables a deal that's a good deal to be a very good to great deal. So mid-teens is typically the return you're looking at on a real estate deal. The OZ, to the extent it's able to be utilized appropriately, can drive that into the low 20s to mid 20s. There's no job requirement. Joe reiterated that. That's not a requirement of the program. And so we've seen, because of that, some people taking issue with the program, and that's not doing what it's supposed to be doing, even though others would quibble with that and say it's actually totally doing what it's intended to do. And it's driving $20 billion of equity value into low income areas, which means $70-ish billion of total investment value if you add in the debt. Joe reiterated that, yes, that is true. There's a lot of money and it's being invested, but unfortunately, it's probably being invested in 10% of the areas instead of 100% of the areas because there's not a requirement to allocate those dollars accordingly or evenly or equitably. And so they find their way to smart guys like Dan and Josh who are doing good deals with, superior returns. So we've got kind of criticism on the type of projects, meaning it's not just affordable housing, it's anything in the zones. And we've got criticism relative to, so far, it's been a little bit geographically centric to 10% of the areas, but as time has gone on, more and more areas are seeing development. We also talked about, that There are grand aspirations that the funds that originally were out had on $1 billion, $2 billion, $5 billion, but that most of those funds don't really have much money over time, and that most of the deals are being done by friends and family, kind of smallish deals with people you know that are accredited investors that are willing to invest in a project and in a group of sponsors that know what they're doing and that have appropriate risk-adjusted returns. We talked about, kind of things that the program could do differently that might enhance the program. So Joe had hit on transparency, better reporting, measuring KPIs, key performance indicators that might be ESG, environmental social governance centric, so that we can start to track how well the program has done over the 10-year period, so that when we get to the end of it, we'll be able to report that the 20 billion, the 100 billion of investment did this for the community. Without that, it will be a little bit difficult to show the efficacy of the program. And we also heard from the Greenberg brothers relative to, hey, if the program was expanded to allow for not just capital gain, but ordinary income to be invested, that would be a way of allowing not just the rich to invest, because they're typically the ones that have capital gains, but every, Sally Q and Don Q public could invest, because everybody would have ordinary income to the extent they wanted to allocate it to the program. Lastly, we heard that we're looking at 2022 and we're hoping for more of a return back to normalcy. I suspect if we had this conversation 12 months ago, we would have said 2021 would be the same thing. But I do agree, Joshua, I think that, worldwide people are much more on top of even Omicron. People are paying attention, more people are getting vaccinated. And so it does feel like there's return, at least somewhat, to the office coming or has occurred, and that will continue, and restaurants continue to start to reopen. It does feel like, that door has creaked open and people are being a bit safer, hopefully, relative to the program. So that is our whirlwind tour. Guests, thanks for hanging in there and joining us for our last installment of this year. We will welcome you back in 2022. Panelists, Daniel, Joshua, and Joe, thanks ever so much for investing your big brains and time, not only in the program, but in being on the program. And I leave you with the morning show, Yellowstone, and Sex Life. Everyone have a super rest of the year, great holiday, and a happy and healthy new year. Panelists, thank you. Over and out. If you have questions, just email us after, and we're always happy to answer. Take care, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.